Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. Kellen here with Droid Life. So we've still got the Galaxy S8 in-house. Obviously, there's still so much to talk about. Now, our full review is done. Be sure to jump below that like button and watch that. Also, first 10 things you should do when you first buy one is up as well. 2 videos definitely worth checking out if you're picking up a Galaxy S8 or you're considering buying one. Either way, what we want to do now is jump into even more tips and tricks. So we're going to do that now by talking about at least 25 plus tips and tricks for your Galaxy S8. I will do my best to talk as quickly as possible, but these things take a while to get through because there is a ton going on with this phone. But either way, let's start first with camera shortcut. One of the #1 things I always like to tell people is figure out the fastest way to launch the camera on your phone. So with this phone, since there is no more physical home button, you just double click that power button right there and it opens up the camera, and then it fires up and you can just start snapping away shots. So you can do that from anywhere. So lock screen, you can do it. If you want to jump all the way into say like Chrome and you're messing around, you decide you need to take a picture, you could just double tap that and it fires up the camera. So be sure to know how to do that. Next thing is screenshots. So again, another change with the Galaxy S8, no physical home button. So we're not doing power and home button. So we're going the traditional Android route in terms of screenshots, and that's power plus volume down. Just hold those for a couple seconds. You'll see the screen sort of vibrate, do a little animation, and then you get all sorts of options. So when you take a screenshot, you get to do a few things. You can scroll capture, assuming you are inside of another app, and it actually allows scrolling. You can draw on things, which would just work like this. And there's custom controls in order to allow you to do more of that stuff as well. The other thing is crop. If you want to crop something, there are quick crop options as well. And then finally, if we do one more screenshot here, there is an option. There's an option down here to just quickly share it. So if you want to share it with somebody, you'll find that there. So screenshot, that's how you do it. Power, volume down, couple seconds, let that happen. All right, so secure lock screen. I talk a lot about secure lock screens. We're big fans of them. So this phone has not only a fingerprint reader, but it's got an iris scanner. It does facial recognition. You can use smart lock. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do in order to get into your phone. And so you should set these things up. You should have a secure lock screen and then figure out what the best sort of combination of things is for you in order to get into these. So what I'm going to do is jump into settings, and we're going to scroll down to lock screen and security. So from lock screen and security, we got to do a whole bunch of work in here. So screen lock type, I have mine set up as a pattern, but you can set up as swipe if you don't want any security, but I don't necessarily recommend that. You could do a PIN, a password. You'll also find options down here for face recognition, fingerprints, or iris scanning. One thing to keep a note, if you're doing face recognition, you can't do iris scanning. If you're doing iris scanning, you can't do face recognition. So you have to choose one of the two, but you can combine one of those with fingerprints so you can get a whole bunch of stuff. So I do pattern. And we'll go ahead and set a pattern here to unlock our phone. Now from here, this is where you can start setting up other things. So fingerprint scanner, you jump in, it's going to require that pattern. But you can set up multiple fingers. So I've set up each index finger, since that is the sort of spot that I'm going to reach the most. It's going to be with that finger, but you can add additional if you want to put your thumb up there, whatever. So set that up. And then face recognition. You can set this up as well. Essentially all it does is remembers your face. And if you don't have a hat on, you have decent lighting, it'll look at your face and unlock your phone. Something to consider. And then the other thing would be, or the iris scanner, you would tap on that as well, go in, and it'll walk you through setting up an iris scanning. So you get to decide then how you want to unlock your phone. The other thing to consider is also adding on a smart lock. So smart lock does a few things. It allows you to unlock your phone without using a secure lock screen if you are in a trusted place, if you're connected to a trusted device, if it recognizes your voice talking a lot, or if it just recognizes that it's on your body. So a bunch of things to talk about there or consider. I'm not going to recommend necessarily the perfect setup, but I have mine set up to do pattern, fingerprints, and face, along with some smart locks depending on where I am. But again, secure lock screen is your friend. You should definitely consider looking into that. All right, so I guess staying in there, I would say let's set up always on display. So always on display is when your phone is sitting in a lock state on a desk, bedside, whatever, it'll show you the clock. So if I just lock the phone really quickly, This is always on display. So you have clock, have the date, battery percentage, and then you have some notifications that are showing that I may want to check out. So in order to get into that, we just tap here on always on display, and then you can toggle that on and off. And again, this is in the lock screen and security section, but you can decide what content you want to show, whether it's clock information, home button on there as well. And then from there, you can start tweaking things, clock, calendar, if you want a picture of somebody. And then if you always wanted to show, there's some stuff in here. Also, if you dive into, I'll go back one more step here. So in Wallpaper In Theme, it doesn't necessarily mention this up front, but if you go into Wallpapers and Themes in your settings, there is an AODs down here, which are some additional always on display designs with different pictures and things like that. You can download some of these, throw them on there, and really sort of tweak that thing. All right, let's dive back in here though. Let's go to display, and I want to talk about something really important, which is the navigation bar. So in display settings, navigation bar, we like this stuff because this is Samsung's first on-screen nav setup. So in this section, you can, well, first of all, adjust the layout if you want. So Samsung phones always do back over here on the right. I'm a traditional Android guy, so I actually like it over on the left. So you can flip that. You get to decide. I'm not going to tell you which one to do, but you can flip that here. You can set up home button sensitivity in here. You can also tweak the color if you want of this area. So when you're inside of an app, you can have it be different colors. Now we talked about this in our first 10 things video, but it's just worth mentioning again. You can really sort of tweak the color of this stuff here. Or if you're using a theme, it tries to pull in some of those options as well to try to match your theme. The other thing I really like in here is this option, which is unlock with home button. So if you have some sort of smart lock setup where your phone can be unlocked by just pressing that home button, this does it right here. So I'll show you if I go back to lock screen and my home button's down there, you just sort of do this long press and it actually unlocks your phone. Now that's doing that because I'm smart lock set up and it knows I'm at home and all of that stuff, but just some really cool things to tweak in here to make sure your navigation bar is right. From there, let's go ahead and jump back a screen and get back into this display settings area. So in here, there's a whole bunch of stuff you may want to tweak to make sure you get your display set up right. First of all, you can adjust brightness, although you can do that from your pull down. Auto brightness, so it'll adjust brightness in whatever lighting condition you are. One thing for sure is blue light filter. So a blue light filter, and I'll just turn it on so you can see, turns everything on your phone sort of this orangish, warmish color, and that eases strain on your eye. It's really good to have it come on at night. So I have a schedule set up. You should set up a schedule. You can have it do sunset to sunrise or custom schedule, and you can actually set specific times. Definitely turn it on. It'll help you sleep at night and things like that. In screen mode, you'll actually find some different settings in here to get your color profile where you like it: adaptive, AMOLED photo, cinema photo, or basic. And if you touch on these, it'll show you what the color profile looks like up here. I just have mine set to adaptive. However, if you keep scrolling and you have one of the latest updates, you'll see some options in here to make your screen look warmer, to make it look cooler, set it right in the middle. You can also even go in and really adjust the sort of tints that you'll see on your phone. You can really adjust the color profile here. Consider doing so. It's just one of those ways to get set up out of the box and then sort of move on from there. If we keep going though, screen resolution, this is completely up to you, but you can adjust this thing from quad HD to full HD down to regular 720p. I don't know, and I don't think that any of this affects your battery life. It's just sort of preference. If you go quad HD, everything's probably zoomed out a little bit smaller. Full HD, you might see a little bit bigger, and then if you go HD, everything's going to be sort of in your face. But this is just something to adjust. I leave mine at full HD. It doesn't really bother me at all. If we continue to scroll down, you'll just see another sort of set of stuff. Like this is where your edge screen stuff is. This is where that nav bar stuff was. This is where your screen timeout is. All of these settings, the display stuff is just one of those things I like to do right out of the box to make sure you've got it set up. So speaking of edge display, let's go ahead and set up the edge screen. So the edge screen, you know, Samsung's phones have these edges and you can swipe out and get into your edge display. So with an edge panel, this is where you would turn it on, number one. You can also set up some things like edge lighting. So when you get notifications, it sort of lights up around the screen. And if we go into edge panels, this is where you would decide what you want to see on here. So right now I just have Smart Select on here, but you could have Apps Edge in case you want some app shortcuts. People Edge if you want your favorite people to show up and just be a swipe away. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here, including weather. You can also go up and download and install additional Edge stuff. There's a few more settings up here, like reordering where they are, and then handle settings actually allow you to decide if you want the edge over here on the right or on the left, what size it is, and then of course you can drag the position of it around to decide where you want to be able to swipe from. that's Edge screen. I'm not a huge fan of it just because I've never been a big fan of the Edge stuff, but I do keep one little swipe so I can get into these animated GIFs and all of that stuff, because that's one of the cooler things you'll find on here. All right, so if we go back into settings though, and we go back into wallpapers and themes. So wallpapers and themes, this is the area you're going to find if to adjust wallpapers, adjust themes, things like that. So down at the bottom, you'll see a bunch of options for wallpapers, themes, icons, and then always on display, which I already showed you. You just may want to consider doing a theme. There are tons of free themes out there. They will allow you to adjust things like this area up here, which would be the notification area. It also allows you to change some of this stuff in here to be a different color. If you want to go dark, you can go for the dark theme. I went sort of with a Google's material style theme, but you'll find all of that stuff in this area. Now, if we jump into themes here and we get it to load, all of your themes that you've downloaded, you'll find up here. New ones, obviously down here. You can tap on those, go in, and you can find previews. You can see exactly what the icons will look like, what your phone will look like, settings, and all of that stuff's in here. Some of these are free, some of them are paid. Now, additionally, wallpapers. If you want to set your wallpaper, this is pretty much where you'll do it. It'll redirect you here almost no matter where you try to set your wallpaper from. And up here, you'll find your wallpaper. So it'll show you most recent ones that are in your gallery, and then it'll show you a whole bunch that Samsung has preloaded on here. If you want to set those, you just tap on that, and it'll go in and it'll ask you what you want to do. Set it just on your home screen, your lock screen, or do you want to set it on both? Obviously, that is completely up to you. All right, so let's go back into settings some more if we can. And there's this whole section here called advanced features. So advanced features are, well, smart stay, which means if you're looking at your phone, it sort of tries to recognize that, and then it will stay on. It won't go to sleep as long as it's at your face. You could be watching a show, or maybe you're just reading something. You don't want your phone to go to sleep. That's what smart stay does. So what I would say is just go through this and figure out which stuff might be for you. There's a one-handed mode that allows you to sort of swipe in and then just use your phone one-handed from one side, depending on what hand you're doing. There's finger gestures, and there's the quick launch camera, which is that double tap over here. I would definitely recommend keeping that on. Smart capture is one of my favorite settings. I showed you this a little bit, but when you use a screenshot, smart capture is all of the stuff at the bottom of the screen that allows you to quickly edit and things like that with your screenshots. I like having that on. Palm swipe to capture. If you don't want to use the shortcut I showed you for screenshots, which is power and volume down, you can actually turn that on, and then a little palm swipe across your screen will actually take a screenshot. Direct call just means you can call someone directly if you are looking at them on your screen right now, so you have their contact up. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I like Smart Alert because when you haven't been touching your phone for a while and you've got notifications and missed calls and stuff, when you pick up your phone, it actually vibrates and tells you, hey, you have some stuff, you better check it out. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. I don't want to do every single one, but you should definitely run through these to make sure you know everything that's included here, because some of these advanced features are pretty cool. So let's back out of there and go back into our settings. So there's this whole section called device maintenance. Now this stuff is a lot of times something we don't highlight, but this stuff actually could come in handy. So what Samsung's trying to do in device maintenance is decide if your phone's running optimally. And so it'll recommend things. And it says right now my phone is running at 89 out of 100, whatever that score is to them. And I can tap optimize now, and it'll try to flush things out of memory and clean up some storage and decide which performance mode and all of that stuff in order to make my phone run the best. This is maybe an area you should check out regularly, see if you want to optimize it, and you should just see if by tapping that button, if you think your phone actually starts performing better and things like that. But you can also jump in here to check on your battery and see if anything's eating up your battery life just by tapping up here on battery usage. You can see your screen on time and if there's any rogue apps or anything doing anything weird. You can also adjust your battery mode and things like that. There's performance modes in here where you can decide if you're gaming, you want to increase performance for gaming or entertainment, or just go really high performance and probably eat up battery. But you'll find storage in here so you can see what's using what. There's also an option in here where you can just say clean now, and it'll wipe out some of the unused or unnecessary things taking up storage. And then of course you can clean up your memory as well, just wipe apps out of all of that stuff. So it's an area that I'm not necessarily saying you really rely on, but you may as well take a look at it here and there just to make sure everything's running fine. All right, so let's go into apps really quickly, and this will load because I have a whole bunch of apps on here. But what I want to do is tap on this button up here and go into default apps. So as you start using your phone, you'll set default apps like your browser, maybe even your home screen, which would be your launcher, your messaging app, your calling app, and all that stuff. This is where you find those settings. So let's say you accidentally set Chrome beta or Samsung's terrible browser, and you really wanted Chrome, home, this is where you would go ahead and adjust that. You tap on that and then pick whichever browser you want. Same goes for messaging apps. If you wanted to use Facebook Messenger or Samsung's or maybe Android messages, this is where you would adjust that. Then of course, I'm definitely going to recommend grabbing a third-party launcher, but if you like Samsung's, this is where you would adjust that stuff as well. So again, to find that, you go into apps, hit the little menu, go up and do default apps, and then you can start tweaking that stuff. All right, so let's jump home. I do have Samsung's launcher up here because for the sake of this and because a lot of people end up using this out of the box, let's look at it. So customizing this, obviously you can long press always, and that gets you into the option to turn off Bixby, and we'll talk more about that later. You can add home screens by hitting this plus button over here, and those will go there. If you don't want a home screen, you can hit this trash button. Down here, you'll also find shortcuts to Wallpapers and Themes, which opens that section I already showed you. This is where you'll find your widgets as well. You scroll through those. If you want to use one, you just long press and grab and drag it somewhere. So I can just drag it in here, or I can hopefully go over here and do a new screen. So we'll long press one more time, and then there are home screen settings. So if you are using Samsung's home screen, this is where you'll get necessarily your layout with home and app screens, or if you don't want, what that app screens meaning is an app drawer. So if you don't want an app drawer, you just go home screen only, and it throws all of your apps on your home screens. I don't want to do that, so we'll leave that there. You can adjust your grid, the app screen grid, which is again your app drawer, and if you want an apps button or not. And now, so what that's saying, apps button, you can see there is no app drawer button down here, and that's because it's accessed via swipe, and then you swipe over. So you can swipe up, down, however you want to do it in here, and then you would swipe horizontally to get into your additional apps. Okay, so some other stuff. Samsung does things a little bit differently than standard Android. So no matter where you are, you can long press and you'll get this little menu. And so in this menu, you'll find all sorts of stuff. You can select multiple items now, and you can see it just kind of dancing around there. Select multiple items, remove that shortcut, add it to a secure folder, make it go to sleep, uninstall, or get more app info. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. Some of it's okay, some of it's kind of frustrating. So for example, if I'm in the app drawer, let's say I want to make a folder. So the easiest way to make a folder is press on an app, get that menu up, and then just say select multiple items, and then just start tapping on whatever you want to be in your folder. And then up top there's an option for creating folder, or you can add things to a secure folder. So I can just say create folder then, and it creates an entire folder. I can then name that, or if I don't want to, I don't have to. And then if I go back up to the front here, there is that new folder that I just created. Now I can grab that and drag it up here if I want, and put it anywhere on my home screen, and then I now have a folder there. So you guys get that works. With folders, you can also long press those as well. I can go ahead and delete that entire folder, and that makes that go away. A lot of stuff, but just keep in mind that you can long press on an app and it brings up an extra menu, and then you can start doing a whole bunch of stuff from there. If you're in your app drawer and you just want to drag, say, a single app, there are some blue areas at the top and bottom, and you just drag that up there, and then it lets you add that single app. Samsung does this stuff kind of weirdly, and again, if you're used to grabbing an app and then making it go away by doing that, you don't do that any longer. If you want something off your home screen, you have to remove the shortcut. Just some weird stuff. Just want to make sure you know how all of that works. All right, so if we swipe down here, I'm going to do a double swipe to get into this quick settings area. Always suggest tweaking this. So again, one swipe down gets to your notifications. Second swipe gets to this area. So the first 6 are definitely the ones you want to pay the most attention to. And I say that because with that single swipe, you do have 6 shortcuts up here. And so your first 6 shortcuts are, again, the ones you probably want to use the most. So I have Wi-Fi, my screen rotation, do not disturb, blue light filter, a flashlight, and airplane mode. So swipe this down, and if we hit this little menu button over here, you can do a button order adjustment, and this just allows you to move things around. If we go back and do button grid, this allows you to adjust the grid and how many items are showing and things like that. So something to consider. I have mine set at 4:3 because that just looks pretty normal to me. And then with your order, I have this set up with this. To move things around, you just drag and drop and move them. There are some additional options down here at the bottom. If you want those up there, you just drag those up and move them into whatever you want. Pretty easy stuff. You guys have seen this before, but it's definitely one of those areas to acknowledge. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Bixby. Yes, Bixby. So Samsung's Assistant, if we swipe over here to the left, it's really slow, kind of worthless assistant at the moment. So I swiped over, now I'm in Bixby. It doesn't really do a whole lot, but you do have this Google Now-ish card setup. So It's pulling in my calendar. It's pulling in Facebook trending and Twitter trending because I've told it to, and then some sports stuff. And then there's today's weather. It's not completely worthless, but we do have Google Now if you want to use that. So Bixby, swipe over again, it gets you into Bixby. It does sort of get wiped out of memory and it has to reload a lot of times. It's actually quite slow. If you want it off, you can actually go ahead and turn it off here, and then from the home screen, if you try to access it, you can see a swipe doesn't do anything. If you do want it on though, you just toggle that on. You can adjust some other things in here. If we go into this little settings, this is where you would adjust Bixby cards, and this is where you get to decide what you want to show up in Bixby. So turn everything off if you don't want it. You could just have weather in your calendar if you want it, maybe your contacts. The other thing is if you want to be able to do Hello Bixby on the lock screen. And so some of this stuff will show up from the lock screen. Completely up to you. There's not a whole lot you can do here, but that is that. And of course, the Bixby button over there, just pressing that launches Bixby. And you can see sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There it goes. So Bixby, I'm not going to just completely shut it down because at some point it's going to get an update that allows for voice action and recognition and control. It doesn't have that yet at the time of this video, so it is what it is. It's sort of a Google Now thing, and you can actually go through the camera and take some pictures. It's Bixby, and I just want to make sure you know it's there. Yeah, Bixby. So moving out of Bixby, let's talk a little bit about multi-window. So if you tap on your little app switcher button, you'll open up this card look that allows you to do multi-window and some other things as well. So if we zoom in a little bit here, get a little closer here, you'll see some options every time you open this window on your card. So one's a little selection tool. The double card look is multi-window, and then you can just close apps if you want. One thing to keep in mind though is you can see Chrome goes full screen here on my phone, but if it doesn't, or you find an app that does but looks weird, or you want to adjust that, every time you hit this app switcher, you'll notice this little green guy right here. So see this little green button? That allows you to go from being full screen to not being full screen. You can see now it sort of crops Chrome a little bit, and you see black up top and bottom. So if I tap that again, I can make it go back to full screen, and then we get that full immersive infinity experience. Just something to keep in mind depending on what app you're using. All right, so going back into those options though, so a selection or multi-window, if we tap the to card, that gets us into multi-window, puts an app up top, and then you can decide if you want another one in here. So now I have two apps in here. As has always been the case, you can grab this middle bar and swipe things up or down, and that will allow you to adjust your window size, so you can swipe that up or down. You can also tap on this and get some other options. One of them is that selection tool. I'll show you in just a second. One is a flip sort of card option. One obviously is an X to get you completely out of there. One thing I did want to show you though is if we're in here and we tap this little, it's like a box within a box, tap that button, it shrinks your app down. So whatever app you actually have up on the screen shrinks that down into a floaty little window. So now I have Droid Life in Chrome in a floaty little window, and there's a couple options there. You can actually close that, maximize it, or if you tap this little shrink button, let's see if I can actually get that. It's kind of a tight little button. So if I tap that, it actually shrinks the app into a floating icon. So I now have Chrome, my Chrome session up here in a floating icon. And I can access that wherever. So I could open up another app, say a sports app, and you can see Chrome is still there. And if I want to access that Chrome tab, I just tap and it will load that right up from wherever I'm at. So it's one of those things you can keep it handy, like Hangouts. It could be really useful. If you don't want to use it, you just tap that button. All right, so another couple of things to look at. This selection tool, which I keep mentioning and ignoring. So I can tap on this little selection tool, and it allows me to choose an area that I want to be pinned to the screen for a little bit. So, and you can drag this to be as big as you want, but let's just say I want this section right here. I tap done. It then pins that section to the top of my screen and then takes me into multi-window. So it just allows you to focus on an area as you go into multi-window without multi-window and then adjusting and all that stuff. Either way, there's a ton of stuff to look at in here, but definitely something to keep in mind. All right, so let's jump into settings real quick. I want to talk about Bluetooth audio. Let's make that go away. So Bluetooth audio, this is Bluetooth 5.0, and you can do some cool things with Bluetooth audio. You can connect to 2 sources at once. So I'm actually connected to both. You can see that now, the UE Boom and these Bose SoundLink headphones. In order to be able to use dual audio, you would go into settings up here and toggle this on. So why would you want to use dual audio? Well, if you and another person are each have headphones that you want to listen to, say you're watching a movie or something like that together on a plane, but you want to have separate headphones, you would want to have this on. Another thing you could do is set up 2 different speakers. So if I had 2 of these UE Booms or just a UE Boom and another random Bluetooth speaker, you could have what essentially means a stereo setup. You could have audio flowing through 2 speakers at the same time. It's just something cool that this phone does and no other phone does at the moment. Another thing I would say to keep in mind though, if you aren't using dual audio, this media volume sync. So if I actually turn on media volume sync, it asks me to turn dual audio off, which is fine. But what media sync is, and you can see it up there, it allows me to adjust media volume on the device and sync it with the volume on your phone. So I don't know if you guys have ever used a Bluetooth device, but you often control volume on your phone, and then your Bluetooth device, it controls sort of separately and has a separate set of controls. But if I have it set up to sync, so you can see I'm controlling it now on my headphones, and up there it is syncing with exactly the volume from my headphones as I adjust it. Just another little trick, something to keep in mind. All right, so let's dive into the camera one more time before we wrap this up. So camera stuff, there's just a lot going on. If you swipe across, you'll get into your sort of on-demand filters. If we swipe this way, this is where all your camera modes are, from auto to pro to panorama, selective focus, food, virtual shots, all of that stuff. And again, I'm getting to those via swipe, and it's not that obvious. There are some little dots down here that sort of signal that, but a swipe this way gets you into that stuff, and a swipe that way gets you into some other modes. One thing you may want to play with, for those of you that are in the silly stuff, are these sort of faces. So if you're doing a selfie or you're taking a picture of someone, you can actually pull up these faces and it'll show dogs and all. So these are like filters you see in Snapchat and stuff like that. Either way, kind of cool stuff if you really want to get into it. Otherwise, up here in settings, this is where you'll find your picture size. So depending on ratio, resolution, all of that can be adjusted in here. Video size, UHD, which is 4K. There's Quad HD as well. Full HD at 60p. Those options are in there. You'll also find tracking autofocus, your front camera settings, if you want to grid on, if you want to do motion, all that stuff. The quick launch, obviously, get in here, and then where your storage location is. Definitely go ahead and tweak some of that stuff. All right, and then the final tip I would offer is set up Google Assistant. You may as well. Again, Bixby's got some work to do. Long press on your home button and that will launch Google Assistant. If you need tips and tricks on how to use Google Assistant, you'll find that we've got tons of videos on that, but launching that, talking to Google is one of the most powerful tools you'll have on any Android smartphone at this time, and your your Galaxy S8 certainly has that. So anyway, that's been at least 25 tips and tricks, so many. Hopefully that helps you guys continue to get more out of your device. Either way, I'm Droid Life. Peace.